Ota botala kanana bido, ota botala karagi agbero.
Ota botala kanana bido, ota botala
Adi amue
ota botala kanana bido, ota botala
adi agbero.
ota botala kanana bido, ota botala.
The history of Oba Ehengbuda. He had or he has an appellation because these people are living deities, or what we call the gods of our lands. They are our ancestors. So he has just one appellation, Ehengbuda Nobu. Sequentially, lots of Obas do have appellation they were known as. For example, Ewa's appellation was Ogidigan or is Ogidigan. Ogidigan means the great. Ozolwa, one of the sons of Oba Ewa the first, one of his appellation is Ni Ozolwa Niba Omiekon. Niba Omiekon or Niba Omi, but fully stretched as Niba Omiekon. It means the conqueror. This shows that these people were warriors, one being the great, the other one being the conqueror. Then we have other Obas like Akenzwa the First, Nisonoro. Nisonoro simply means like he was so worthy, the worthiest of all the Obas. So the Benins now said that his worth is likened to the excessive flood that comes from the heaven. Iso, sky, oro means flood, nisonoro. So the Benins equated his worth to the flood that comes from the sky. So it became his appellation, nisonoro. We have the likes of Eweka the second, Obiudu. He was very courageous, he was brave in doing some policies after the restoration of the Benin monarch. So appellations of various Obas tells about who they really were during their sojourn on earth. One of which is Ehengbuda Nobu. Nobu means a diviner. Alright, he was with the instances of his birth, as well as how he was born and what he eventually became. Alright, he was someone who believed in the mysticism of the earthly order. So when he eventually sojourned to the land of the great beyond, so the Benin remembered him as a mystic or a mystical Oba. So hence the appellation, Ehengbuda Nobo. Ehengbuda had a princely name that was recently unveiled by my mentor, obviously, Dr. Ehengbuda. Before then, we are taught that the princely name was lost in time, but until it was unveiled by Dr. Ehengbuda about 5 years ago. His name is called Prince Odiawato. Alright, Prince Odiawato mother was called Queen Umelu. Prince Odiawata became the Oba of Benin in the year 1580. He reigned for about 22 years. He sojourned to the land of Great Beyond under controversial circumstances in the year 1602. Under controversial circumstances. Growing up as a prince was quite tumultuous because of the level of the father he had. His father is Oba Orogboa, the sailor king, the only sailor king the Benin people ever had. So because when Obarobwa eventually became the Oba of Benin, after his own father, Obaisige, had sojourned, so that means Obaisige is the grandfather of Oba Ehengbuda, and Obaisige's father was Ozolwa Niba Miankon. Obazola's father was Ewa the Great. So these are list of the 5 warrior kings of Benin. So Ehengbuda tends to be the last amongst the list of these 5 warrior kings. Alright, but preferentially, in recent times, I'm trying to make that historical correction that there was a warrior king that lived before the eras of the Obas, which is Ogisu or Doligi. So that technically makes Ehengbuda across the 2 dynasties of Benin the 6th warrior king. Invariably, maybe the last warrior king. Or there's also another argument that says Akenzwa II is also a warrior king because of the attribute of emancipating the Edo people or the Bendel people from the caprices of the Yoruba tribalistic game. But I'm not going to take my historical narrative through the expert of Oba Akenzwa II.
Okay.
Which one of my favorite Oba.
Wow.
Now, Ehengbuda had to grow as a prince without the guidance of his father. First, Obarogba, the father of Prince of Diawato, schooled in Lisbon, and that is why he's largely believed as the first literate king in Benin. When we use the word literacy, we're talking about Western literacy. We are not saying that the kings of Benin prior before Orogba were illiterate.
Yeah.
All right, a comparison of the native wisdom, all right, to the Western education and system that makes Orogba the first Westernly educated Oba of Benin. All right. Although there's also sort of an argument which we've been trying to die down, was that some believed that Esige was also Westernly educated. But to be Westernly educated, you have to pass through 3 schools of thought. You have to be considered literate in any topic. You have to know how to read, you know how to write, and you have to know how to read, write, and I think spell.
So yeah.
Read, write, and no, read, write, and speak.
Okay.
Read, write, and
Communication.
speak. Yeah, these are the 3 things that qualify you to be literate. You and I are currently literate in English language because we can read it, we can write it, and we can speak it. That makes literacy. Now, what Esige was able to do was he was able to speak the Portuguese language, but he was unable to write and read. All right, so that made Oroba the first Westernly literate king of Benin. So he schooled there as a prince during when there was a great exchange between the Portuguese emissaries and the Benin emissaries. So there was this culturally exchanges between 2 trade. All right. So some of the princes of the Benin realm, as well as the likes of the Ehengbuda, was sent by Obaisige to school in Lisbon. So he was largely not available. All right. When he came back, that was almost the time his father Obaisige had passed on. So when he came back and became the king of Benin, he was left through the expansion of the Benin Empire through the transatlantic line. Because of that, he spent 90% of his entire reign, through conquest. So he was not really available as a father to cater, to school his crown prince, Prince Odiawato, until Obarogba got into present-day Ghana, precisely River Volta in present-day Ghana as a country, when he heard of an intriguing conspiracy that was going on in the palace, that his son, Prince Odiawato, was sleeping with one of his father's wife. a grand conspiracy against this prince. The politics of the palace, if you want to ask. So because of that, it was a conspiracy that he needed to come assuage, fiddle down. So eventually he got to Benin, having spent over 20 years, between 15 to 20 years, on the sojourn through conquest. He came back home, and this was what he was faced with. A trial was set for Prince Odiawato. Alright? It was set. A panel was raised to try him if he was actually guilty of the crime. When he was leaving the quarter of his mother Atoselu, Queen Umilu, no, not Atoselu, but within the palace territories. Alright, at the present day, the obviously, because the palace has since constricted, the old Udwenrie, that is the quarters of the wives of the Oba of Benin, it's at the present day Benin prison along Sapele Road.
Okay.
That area was where the quarters of the wives of the Oba was being stationed in the old palace. Because almost all those the King Square was Unogwa. Unogwa is like the entrance into the palace. Like the bedroom, the bedroom of the Oba of Benin is at the present day of Avorame Square.
Oh.
Sorry, no, not Oba Avorame, Oba Akenzwa Cultural Center.
Oh, okay.
That was the bedroom. That was like the quarter of the Oba. Then while the quarter of the wives of the Obas were farther down to around the present Central Hospital, within almost at the territories, almost opposite the present day prison. Alright, the prison, which the Benin called Ewedo, was established by Ewedo. Alright, it was because Ewedo was a foreign name. At the time he chose that name as an Oba, it was a foreign name. So when he sojourned, the Benin's now named one of his creative idea, which was to establish a prison system to his name. So Ewedo now today in Benin means prison. Alright. So the prison that Ewedo established, or Ewedo established over 800 years ago, was eventually, it was the same place that the Nigerian government now established the present day prison about 60 years ago. Call it coincidence, but opposite that prison, alright, was the
wife quarters.
The quarters of Dwenria. Alright. So the message had already got into Queen Umilu, the mother of Prince Odiawato, that a verdict will be passed on the son, a verdict of guilt or a verdict of innocence. So there was a common saying. The mother now said, no, Prince Odiawato told the mother that if peradventure you hear that there is a loud noise, too loud noise, know that I am victorious. Alright? That I'm victorious. Then, if you hear just, If you hear just a loud noise, know that I'm victorious. If you hear two loud noises, know that I have
found guilty.
I have been found guilty. Alright? One loud noise for victory.
Being victorious, and two for being guilty.
For being guilty. That was the information that was passed to the mom. So, with the retinue of Prince Odiawato, when he got to the arena where his case will be judged, there was a loud uproar. Alright? For the welcoming of the prince. For the welcoming of the prince, there was a loud uproar. Like the prince is here, the prince is here. There was a loud uproar. Eventually that case was judged and it became victorious. There was another uproar. There was another noise.
Sorry, you said the news came to the mother of Oba Prince Odiawato, that if there is a noise means he's victorious.
If it is one single
noise means he's victorious. And if it's two means he's found guilty.
It's found guilty.
So when the first opera came to welcome
He
the prince.
welcome him.
Then the second.
The second was because the case was judged and he was found not guilty. So there was another opera. So the mom did not know that the son has been vindicated. He only felt that being that it was a second opera, that means the son was found guilty and he was going to be killed. So instead, she now drowned herself in a well that is popularly called, I don't know, I can't tell for a fact whether the well is still in the palace, but it's popularly called Okuwu. Okay, he drowned himself in that well. That he doesn't want to be alive to see his son killed, not knowing that his son was actually vindicated for the crime that he was accused of. That made Prince Odiawato very unstable as a young prince, for losing his mother through that tragic instance. And he did warn, for obvious reasons. He did carry out a threat that he was going to wipe those co-conspirators. What I am not privy to tell the camera whether he went ahead to carry out what he said, that for denying him the love of a mother. So eventually, he turned on him as an Oba. He became quite harsh in his some of his verdicts, and he hated women because he got more engaged in the mysticism of life. He got more engaged in the mysticism of life. He was quoted to have been one of the wives of the Oba, his father, Oba, had to perform sacrifices to all the deities of Benin so as he can have interest in a woman. Thank you. He can have interest in a woman. So when those sacrifices were carried out, he eventually had interest in a woman, and he had very few children, maybe about 2 or 3. But history can be able to remember about 2. His son, Prince Odogbo, will eventually become Oba Ohwa, and the popular princess Isiuwa. There was a narration that was done by a respected Chief Ochetenagiabi of one of the princesses that was married to Ekwenedi. That was the daughter of Oba Ehengbuda, Princess Isiuwa. And so one of the daughters, I think outside the crown prince, which was Prince Odogbo and Isiuwa, history might not be able to tell whether Ehengbuda had other children. Alright? Had other children. There is a part of the narrative that I would have wanted to unveil, but it's quite very mystical. And I don't think it's for the public consumption of when Prince Odogbo was born. He had feminine features. Some book has said he was hermaphrodite. Alright, but he wasn't. He wasn't, as a matter of fact. And there was his father, Ehengbuda, stationed all the mystic powers in the entire Benin Empire at that time at a place now called Ebo Street. But it's not actually called Ebo Street. It's actually called Ebo Street. Ebo Street is popular now called Ebo. Obo is a diviner, singular. Ebo is diviners, plural. So he stationed them there at a place. Once you enter the Ebo Street, you see a Ehengbuda house. You want to see it, you know it's a traditional place. You just look up, Ehengbuda Palace. He spent more time. It was believed that Ehengbuda, when he challenged God Almighty, just like his great-great-grandfather or so, Baiwai I also challenged God. There in that Ehengbuda's palace, not the Oba's palace, and he had another separate palace where he was performing his mystical powers and testing his mystical powers with all the forces of the world. You know, just like he had 201 mazes. Like he built the palace had 201 doors entrance. So he built that maze that if eventually having challenged God, if God eventually descends, he will be able to deceive him through those 201 doors. Alright? But these cannot be verified if it's actually true historical narrative or if it was just folklore. Alright? But one thing I have believed in my experience of having to critically study Benin history is understanding that most of the folklores that we think are fairy tales or folklores are actually history, the true history that was hidden by a folkloric story.
Just like the story of the hawk that we used to think is a myth.
It's a myth, but eventually discovered it's a true history that happened in Benin, but was hidden. Like let me quickly say this: I had in one of my interview with Dr. Ehengbuda about 2 years ago. He told me of when he was writing Ewa the Great, one of his numerous books. He said he had written a folklore of Prince Ogun before he became Ewa the First. In one of the days in the forest, saw a big python swallowing a leopard on top of a mighty Iroko tree. He was sleeping beneath it, and blood kept dripping on him. So when he now woke up, he now discovered that it was a python and a leopard fighting all through the night, and through that friction of fight, the blood started dripping from the body of the leopard. He said when he was writing it, he said it was practically impossible. He wrote it as a folklore because when he was being told, he was told that it was a folklore, that it's not possible for a leopard to climb through that Iroko tree, that farther up. That was when he wrote that book in 1992. Until one day he was watching all this Najo wildlife in one of the stations, maybe like 4 years ago. He discovered that a leopard actually climbed an Iroko tree.
Wow.
So that means whatever story that the Benin told at that time, they were not lying about it. Then he also told me one that I think a whole lot of viewers might have seen in my page where I talked about it of Obaiwai's, the first mother, had 4 breasts. The woman with the 4 breasts.
Yeah.
And the woman from Ute. She was called, her real name was Oveme, but eventually popularly now called Ele Niye Ewai.
I think I've heard that before.
He didn't believe it when he was writing it. In short, when he presented the book to Obaridi blessed memory, Obaridi frowned at it because they didn't believe that it was true. That a woman could have, or someone could have 4 breasts. Until one of his, Dr. Isen's son, who is a medical doctor in the United States, read the book and I said, that is true. There's what we call supranumerary breast, where you have more than 2 breasts in the body, among the milk line.
Yeah.
Alright, so there's a provision for humans to have more than 2 breasts.
Yeah. I think I did an interview with him about that, and I was really shocked myself, like 4 breasts, until I actually saw the picture, like wow, so this is real.
So these are some of the things that's why when I try to talk about Benin history, I try to say like, it sounds like a folklore, but it might not really have been a folklore. It could have been a real perspective of history that happened in Benin, but some of these ancient Benin storytellers wanted to hide the real truth of the history and encoded it in folktales. That is why when I tell people that whatever knowledge you think you have about Benin history could just be less than 5%. Alright? I don't think I have up to 1% of Benin history. I don't even think I have up to 0.5. So whatever you think you know could not have been the truth. Could have been something way deeper. That's why in Benin, he said, Agasedo, Edo Yere. And when you get to Edo, Edo is still far, and you want to wonder why. It's in all perspective, all right, in terms of even a historical narrative. Let me not go too far from our topic, which is Oba Ehengbuda. Now, Oba Ehengbuda was able to assemble class of diviners in a place now called Ebo Street, or Ebo, popular now called Ebo Street, to validate Prince Odogbo, his only son, if he was actually a male and a female. Some mystical thing happened. Some mystical thing happened. I'm not going to say what happened. But eventually, in order to prove that his son was a male, because he's a male, like, you know, I mean, it happens. You've seen some very fine male that looks like a women. They have they have breasts, something that looks like breasts, and all that, but they're actually male. So that's what happened to Prince Odogbo. So the Benin people wanted to know if the prince was actually a male or a female. So Oba Ehengbuda, his father, now called the son and his age group, all right, to naked with him and walk through the streets of Benin, so that the Benin people can see him naked to actually prove that he's a male and not a female. Now that age group people that walked with Prince Odogbo, they are now called Ifiento. It's a guild now in Benin. So I might not be able to have a pictorial demonstration, but if you're very conversant with what happens in the palace, you see some age group of people. They wear a brown, it looks like a brown skirt, buluku. Their bodies are naked. They don't put on clothes, just a brown skirt, and sometimes a whole stick to clear road when the monarch, when the Oba is going for a function, going to inaugurate, once you're having any traditional functions. That group is called Ifiento. Alright, the origin of that group is what I just explained. They were a group of young, it's age group that walked around Benin Metropolitan 400-500 years ago to test that he was actually male, so that the Benin people can see he was actually a male and not the popularly called a female, or that he was not as well as a hermaphrodite. Okay, so Ehengbuda perfected his mystic prowess, and he had a mystic mirror which the Benin called Aranza or Ehengbuda. The mystic mirror Ehengbuda used in looking at his mother in heaven. Yes, that mirror was destroyed during the reign of Oba Ugbebo in about 1816, when Oba Ugbebo set himself and the palace on fire. We had that mirror. It is called Awanza Oge Ehengbuda, the mystic mirror of Oba Ehengbuda. So he indulged in so many practical mysticism. And one very unique thing about Oba Ehengbuda's reign, which I would have blamed myself if I didn't quickly mention. Alright, at the earlier stage of the formation of the second dynasty, there was a prince called Prince Elegbe. Alright, one of the sons of Oba Wahwai. He was a grandson. For those who doesn't know about Wahwai, Oromi is the first Oba of Benin in the second dynasty. Eweka the first is the second Oba of Benin. Then the third Oba of Benin is actually Oba Wahwai. That Oba Wahwai had no male child. He had a female child called Princess Imadeyo. People should not mistake Princess Imadeyo for Princess Ideleyo. Princess Ideleyo was a woman who almost became the Oba of Benin. She was one of the daughters of Obaiwa the first. That could have been like 300 years later. But this one I'm talking about is not Ideleyo, it's Imadeyo. She was the first child, the first daughter of Obawakwan. Obawakwan had no son. So, but that Wakwan and had, that Imadeyo had a son called Elegbe. So Elegbe wanted to become the Oba of Benin. So, but the king makers or the king crowners or the chiefs of Benin frowned at, because he has is only maternally connected to the royal line. He cannot be. Instead, he was given to his step uncle, Ehengbuda. So that Elegbe went to form a kingdom that was independent from Benin for over 400 years. It was by Ehengbuda. A lot of Obas like Ozolwa, Esige, they all sojourned to recapture a part of their empire from Elegbe, Elegbe progeny, those from the Elegbe line. They could not succeed. It was Ehengbuda who eventually sojourned into Iyekorion, where I'm from. My villages were the first parts of the Ugu kingdom that was conquered. The Ukbatul houses, which my village happens to be one of them in Bekwe. So after which he went to another station at Ewobere, where he was able to reclaim he was able to reclaim the headquarters of Ugu kingdom, which was stationed at that time at Umogun Ozuagbo. Alright, it's not called Umogun Nehere. There's another Umogun of Wado. Alright, but it was Umogun Ozuagbo that was the capital of Ugu kingdom. So it was that Ehengbuda that was able to capture the Ugu kingdom and reconnect them back to Benin. And the sons of Elegbes are found in prominent communities in Orion as the Enigi. Okay, not Enigis.
Okay,
Enoge is singular, Enigi is plural.
plural.
So you don't pluralize what is already plural.
Okay, sorry.
So Enigi.
Enigi. No
Yeah.
S. Alright.
So those Ube, Umogunokwa, Ewisi.
But they are still under Benin.
No, they are all under Benin. They are all Enoge subservient to, or Enige to the Oba of Benin. So, but at one point in history, they were largely independent from the Oba of Benin until Ehengbuda went to reconquer them. They were Benin communities, alright, but formed by recalcitrant Elegbe, for he felt that he was being denied the throne of his grandfather. Alright, so Ehengbuda played a very instrumental role about that. Now Ehengbuda made one mortal mistake, which led to his death. Although it is very controversial, his death is quite very controversial. Controversial in the sense that some Benin authorities believe that Ehengbuda never died, that he ascended to heaven. But there's no basis to disagree, because even you as a Christian, you believe that Enoch never died, isn't it? So I don't think there's anything wrong. This has nothing to do with that we copying Christianity. The story has been there right from time immemorial, even before Christianity came, that Ehengbuda never died. Instead, he just climbed to heaven.
Flew to heaven.
Don't also forget that Yorubas believe that Oduduwa fell from the sky.
From the sky,
So I don't see any reason why Benin shouldn't believe that one of their Obas did not die. Instead,
just walk straight into heaven.
Ascended to heaven like Jesus Christ. So the point is, it's two schools of thought. But if you ask me which of the school of thought do I believe, I say I believe in the second school of thought, that he actually died.
He actually died. Okay, what are your reasons?
What are my reasons? Yes, because of the festival being performed in the palace every year. Now, Ehengbuda made a mortal mistake. He wanted to step in the foot of his father. His father was a sailor, well trained. So he tried to gather some of these seafarers to accompany him so that he can monitor the the location or the place that his father had established a few years back, maybe like 20 years or 22 years back, which was Eko. He wanted to go to Eko, all right, to investigate what was going on, the monarchy that has been established there, and how they were thriving. So he was able to gather some of the age-old boats or ships that his father used in war conquest. You know, those things are out of shape. So he didn't understand the sea language, but he wanted to engage in in the language of the sea. All right, he wanted to get engaged in the language of the sea. So eventually, when he got to a place the Benin called River Ora, it's now what we call the Lekki Peninsula. He has before that time from Giligili, all right, down to the Benin port at Overton down to Lagos takes about 7 days, 8 days approximately to get to Lagos Island. But he has he has done about 6 days journey, just 2 days to get to his location. That is when the ship capsided. I'm saying this is the school of thought that I believe.
Now you believe, yeah.
I know a lot of Benin viewers are gonna like, no, he didn't die. So that's why I'm saying that these are two school of thought. I try to present it as best as I can.
Yes,
so,
it's not like for the viewers to not pick which one.
Which one? I'm coming from a scientific background, and I do believe that no one goes like this. So the boat capsided and he drowned. Now there is a festival that recognizes or that admonishes that event. It is called the Oludo Dams. In the Oludo Dams, you see the dancers holding their hands, all right, in form of a cycle and trying to swirl this way and this way. Swirl this way, that's how the dance is. We believe that is a reminiscent of what took place when the sea was waving the boat to both sides. So for them to capture as a form of a reminiscence, that dance came. Now, there were no formal way of writing. So Benin's kept their history in different forms, as act, as songs, as dances.
Beautiful.
In different ways. But I sincerely or seriously believe that the Oludo dance captures the event of the demise, would that be wrong, of the Oba of Benin sojourn into the land of great beyond. Oba Imaiwu, Oba do not die. It goes to the great land of beyond. However, it was also what we should also take cognizance of. It was also the reign of Oba Ehengbuda that the Benin Iwu mark. You know the Iwu. Dr. Isen Ehagosa invented the Benin Iwu dressing.
Yeah.
That thing you see on, not the other Anebeno. It's long down like this, it's long down like this, so we have here.
Yeah.
It's the Iwu mark. It was reigned on by Ehengbuda, one of his sojourns to Akure, that I don't want to talk about that history. It's not meant for public consumption. But however, he came with that mark when he went to Akure. Something happened. So when he got to Benin, the chiefs that accompanied him knew exactly what happened. Instead of them to relate the true extent of what really transpired, how the Oba got that body mark, they now said that it was the Oba that self-inflicted that mark on his body, so as to distinguish the Benin race from other races, that it is now compulsory for every son who has attained a level of Ibama, Egele, adulthood, to have that on their bare body. Alright? Both the male and the female. The male Iwu has some altercation from the female Iwu. And the royal Iwu also have some slight altercation from the noble or the commoner's Iwu. But when it now became the real authentic body mark identification, what you call tattoo, for every true Edo man. So whenever you see any man putting on, having that Iwu mark, know he's a Benin president. He shouldn't be touched. And then you were regarded as Okbioba and Okwoba. Only when you have had Osiwu. Osiwu, it's like a traditional surgeon that is equipped to be able to put that body mark on people. So that act faded because of the coming in of the textile industry. It is of no use for me to show the Iwu mark on my body now because the clothes is going to cover it. No one is going to see it. So that's why how the brilliant mind of the likes of Dr. Isen Ehengbuda and I invented the Iwu body dressing and said that since Benin's no longer show the Iwu body marks on their body, let's not show that Iwu mark on the clothes so that we can put it on. And that was invented, and that was given a state recognition by the then Oba already of the blessed memory in 1982. In 1982. So that itself is not the complete story of Ehengbuda, but at least we can pause there for today with a hope that can have other perspective to relate with when discussing Ehengbuda Noble, Ehengbuda the mystic Oba
of Benin. Oh, wow. It's been great so far. I've really enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, Izodua, for the explanation, for the analysis. It's been great so far.
Ota botala kanana bido, ota botala karegi agbero. Ota botala kanana bido, ota botala karegi agbero. Ota botala kanana bido, ota botala karegi agbero. Ota botala kanana bido.